You're watching AWB TV. Welcome to Capital Focus. A closer look at the issues that are most relevant to Washington employers.
Hello, my name is Dave Maston, and this is Capital Focus, where we bring you the highlights of the 2021 legislative session. So let's jump right in with AWB News. Last week, we highlighted the COVID-19 vaccine our state received and focused on the need to get those doses out the door. Well, now, Governor Jay Inslee is executing a new vaccine strategy, working closely with Starbucks, Microsoft, Costco, and Keiser Permanente, and the plan is to get 45,000 doses out the door every day. We're going to learn more about that later in the show from the new Secretary of Health. Big investments in Washington infrastructure are in the news. CNN reports there's hope for a federal package coming out of Congress this year, and at the state level, lawmakers have introduced the first of many transportation packages. It's a 16-year, $26 billion proposal. Others are expected as well, and for something to pass, it's going to take bipartisan support. A new bill in the legislature would raise the cost of natural gas and ban natural gas in new construction. Many manufacturers rely on natural gas as their only energy source. Clearly, this is important for employers, and we'll have more on this in coming weeks. A bill that would partially reopen restaurants and other businesses drew a big crowd last week. More than 1,600 people signed in for a hearing on Senate Bill 5114. The bill would move the entire state to Phase 2 of the state reopening plan. Gyms, restaurants, and other businesses would be allowed to open up to 25% capacity. Check out last week's episode for more details. Up next on Capital Focus, we take a look at one of the biggest business tax increases in state history. We'll be right back.
They won't fly this airline.
You can fly if you want to, cause we do safety right. We have air that's clean and disinfectant machines zapping germs like an arcade space fun. And we dance
do the dance, do the dance.
Everybody wash some hands.
Do the dance while always wearing a mask. Do the dance, do the dance.
No, seriously, please wash your hands.
Do the dance, do the dance.
HEPA filters cleaning commence.
Alaska Safety Dance. Alaska Safety Dance. Alaska Safety Dance.
Welcome back to Capital Focus. And now, the close-up.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Dave Maston. Washington employers have been through a lot over this past year, and now they're facing a new tax bill. The timing really couldn't be worse, and so let's take a look at that.
Employers struggling to survive the pandemic are facing yet another shock. The unemployment insurance tax is spiking due to unprecedented closures and layoffs from the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's how it works. Washington employers pay taxes to support the state's unemployment insurance trust fund, which funds unemployment benefits for workers when they're laid off. This trust fund paid roughly $4 billion over the past year, supporting hundreds of thousands of people. And now we only have about 6 months of benefits left in the bank. To build the reserves back, state law requires employer tax increases. 2 major taxes on employers have already been assessed. The class-based tax is determined by what class a company is in and by how many people they have laid off. And the social cost tax is designed to support the trust fund when companies go out of business altogether. All employers pay this tax. This adds up to tens of thousands of dollars of yearly increases for some. And if we don't take action this legislative session, we'll see catastrophic rate increases.
My unemployment insurance taxes are going up from 0.1% to 1.47%. That's going to present a bill to me almost 15 times higher than it was last year.
Our unemployment insurance taxes have gone up over 400% this year, and we have had 0 claims for unemployment.
We estimate a $150,000 increase in expense in 2021 as a result of these increases, which is fairly significant for a company of our size that has 230 employees.
I'm not quite sure what the solution is, but to continue to pressure small business by way of taxes and look at them for revenue for the state, there's got to be a better solution.
To increase our contribution to the fund, I think it's only reasonable for us as employers to ask you, what are you doing to protect, invest, and plan for economic downturn so that you don't have to keep coming back to the taxpayers and asking for more money?
We just cannot afford another tax increase after having suffered for 10 months with very marginal business, not knowing from one week to the next if we're going to even be able to be open. It's crazy.
A third unemployment tax could also rise next year. That's the solvency tax. This kicks in when there's less than 7 months of benefits left in the fund. AWB is working with lawmakers and the governor's office on solutions. But we need your voice to help lawmakers understand the importance of this to your business, your family, and your community.
That was AWB's Bob Battles, and he's here with us now. Bob, thanks for coming, and tell us, what do we need to do next? How do we fix this?
Thanks, Dave. What we need is legislation. Here to help us explore solutions, I'm joined by Senator Karen Keiser, Chair of the Senate Labor, Commerce, and Tribal Affairs Committee, and also Senator Curtis King, the committee's ranking member. Senators, welcome.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you both being here. I'm going to start with a question to you, Senator Keiser. You know, we know that employers are experiencing astronomical increases of UI tax rates as a result of the pandemic. You've worked hard with business to address this unprecedented increase. Tell us about your proposed legislation, Senate Bill 5061.
The legislation that we have gotten out of committee and will get out of Rules Committee and take to the Senate floor is a emergency effort to stop the tax increases that so many small businesses are seeing. And we're really taking a big bite out of the tax increase that otherwise take effect April 1 when business has to pay their quarterly premiums. And the bill before us is a tax reduction of $1.2 billion in UI premiums in 2021. Over the life of the bill, the tax cut amounts to $2.6 billion. Put that into sort of real world numbers. The average premium that a small business pays per employee is currently this last year $352 $352 average. Under our bill, the premium will increase 2021 $360 a year, a $10 increase. Now, this is, betting on a lot of things coming together and working out as we're in uncertain times. So I will just say this is a huge, big step towards avoiding that big premium increase April 1st. But we're going to have to keep working on this issue and come back to it again next year.
Thank you, Senator Keiser. Senator King, I'd like to ask you your thoughts on the Senate bill and how you feel that that's going to address this issue.
Well, first off, let me say thank you to the good chair and her efforts to try and help the relief to some of our businesses, most of our businesses around the state. I appreciate that enormously. We work at times, most of the time we work very well together. We don't always agree about but I appreciate that willingness to have those conversations. In regards to this bill, I think it's a good start. It goes a long way in reducing these increases that have just scared the daylights out of most of our businesses. I think there's more that we can do, and I think we need to keep working on it. This bill solves our problems, and I don't think anybody thinks it does. We got to look at what else can we do? What else can we do this year to help our businesses just not get decimated by these tax increases? And I think there's a willingness on most people's part to do that. So we have to keep working it. But as she said, we need to get this bill going and out of here, because the deadline is for these businesses is April 1st. And if we can get this bill done and out, whether we can improve it before then, we're going to work on it. But if we don't, it is a great step forward to help our businesses survive. And that's why there's this push to get it out of rules, I think, today. And then my guess is we're going to vote on it on the floor on Wednesday, and get it over to the House, and try to expedite it over there. So there we are.
And it has an emergency clause that it takes effect immediately.
Yeah.
So as we talked about there, just the next steps. Senator King, you mentioned a few of the next steps. Senator Keiser kind of could go in more detail, just a little bit. What are the next steps here? What do we need to get this bill moving forward?
We need to get it passed on a bipartisan basis off the Senate floor over to the House. And then we need to urge the House to move it as quickly as possible to the governor's desk so it can be signed into law and take effect. One of our complications here is because we're changing so many different pieces of the tax structure, it's going to take a lot of recalculation by the Employment Security Department with their computers and their systems. And I don't want to jam them too hard, because you know we've had a really tough year with the Employment Security Department. So if we can get this thing enacted in time, they can change their computers, send out the new tax bills so we see the reduction in the outcome for premiums. That's my hope.
Thank you. I know that you both have touched on it, but if generally I want to ask first Senator King, then Senator Keiser, does this solve everything? What else is going to have to be done here, and why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my standpoint, it still bothers me that we are increasing taxes on businesses that have just been scraping and scratching and doing everything they can to try and keep their doors open and survive, and then they get hit with a tax increase. So I think there's more we need to do. I would like, and I think I'm not going to put words in the good chair's mouth, but I think there's several of us that would like to take maybe up to $1 billion out of the rainy day fund. I think this is an emergency. This is an emergency for our economy. It's an emergency for our businesses, our small businesses. And if we can take that out, we can use that, I think, to lower not only the social, but the experience rating on most of our businesses that have been so hard hit. And so that's one of the things we ought to do. And I firmly agree with the chair that next year we got to come back and look at this again and keep tweaking this and working this issue.
Senator Keiser?
One of the real frustrations about this current situation is that the impact has been so uneven in our economy. Certain sectors have been doing just fine. You know, Amazon is thriving and the high-tech industry is doing well. Anybody who can work remotely hasn't had to go on unemployment. But the hospitality industry, the retail sector, at least the small business, Main Street businesses have been hit horribly. And another one of my favorites is the performing arts and live music scene and venues have been just decimated. And these industries need special attention and my targeted support beyond this unemployment bill. The unemployment bill basically treats everyone alike. And like I said, I don't really think we need to help out some of the thriving Microsofts and Amazons going on. I think what we really need to do is find targeted relief for the hospitality industry, the small retailers, and some of the other hardest hit sectors. So I'm going to be working with Senator King. I'll work with the budget people, see what we can do in terms of either BSA dollars and or new federal dollars. If we can get some new federal support from the new administration for state and local government, we could help backfill the trust fund with those dollars too.
Senators, thank you for your insights and for joining us today. We look forward to working with you to find a solution. Dave, back to you.
You know, Bob, just listening to that, in the legislative world, we call that a heavy, heavy lift. This is a big issue, and it seems like timing is really important, and that the legislature's got to get this moving. Can you give us kind of a sense of what that timing is going to be?
Dave, you're absolutely correct. The timing is critical. We need to have a bill move through this session early, within the end of this month, is really critical in this for success of this whole thing.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you, Bob, for joining us. And we'll be right back with Capital Focus.
Here at Patriot Plumbing, Heating and Cooling, we do plumbing, electrical, and heating and air conditioning.
We have 20 employees on staff, plus my business partner and myself.
When we have employees come work for us, it's not just a paycheck, but it's their family we're taking care of. And so obviously health insurance is a huge part of that.
We are nothing without our employees, and with AWB's Health Choice, it gives us the ability to offer big benefits for a small business.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Dave Maston. Across America, families are scrambling to find the COVID-19 vaccine. And governors are facing huge pressure to get as many doses out as quickly as possible. And in recent days, many states have made more people eligible earlier to get the dose. But some are having trouble securing enough vaccines to meet patient demand. Here now to help us learn more is our Government Affairs Director for Healthcare, Amy Anderson. Amy, you have some official words from the Department of Health, I understand. Welcome to Capital Focus.
We do. Thank you, Dave. I'm happy to be here. And today I'm joined by Dr. Umair Shah, Secretary of Washington State's Department of Health. Dr. Shah, welcome to Capital Focus.
Amy, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time today. We know you're very busy and appreciate all the work you're doing on behalf of Washingtonians. This week, President Biden released a new plan for vaccinating the country. Are you encouraged by the plan, and what does it mean for Washington State?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I, as you can imagine, am learning my way around the state of Washington as well, since I've just been a couple of weeks on the ground and really trying to recognize all the patterns and all the partners and just really understanding how everybody works together. And that transition is one thing, but in addition, we have a transition at the federal level. And so, with the new president and his plan, the couple of things that I would say is, one, it is heartening that COVID-19 is the number one priority coming in for this administration. And it is also important to note that there are so many pieces of the response that President Biden has signed into with executive orders last couple of days to really make sure, everything from increased production of personal protective equipment to requiring of wearing of masks in certain federal buildings, making sure that we're getting more partnership with states and locals across the country. So I do think there is a lot of real renewed focus, and we are optimistic that we're going to increase our vaccination throughput. But again, vaccination throughput can only be increased when you have increased vaccination supply. And so that is the other piece of this that's absolutely critical. And what we don't know is how much of this is under the federal piece of the pie or the puzzle versus what's in the pharmaceutical companies having to ramp up production. And we just don't know what that roadmap looks like. And we hope in the next week or two, we're going to start to get more information on what the specifics of their plans are to get more Washingtonians, for example, vaccine access, and certainly so we can make sure that Washingtonians are vaccinated as quickly as we can.
Well, great. It sounds like we can be cautiously optimistic then. Moving on, we've had several of our member companies reach out for clarification on determining COVID vaccine eligibility. So there's the critical worker list that was released in March of 2020, and the vaccine phases released this month. Can you please talk to the difference between the two?
Sure. So, as you know, we've been spending the first several weeks really vaccinating the 1A category of workers, which is the hospital workers, those in long-term care facilities, whether residents or staff. And as we now move, and Governor Inslee on Monday of this past week went ahead and announced that we are moving into 1B first tier. That's 1B1. And that includes really those who are above the age of 65, or if they live in multi-generational households above the age of 50. And our goal is to get about half of those people vaccinated before we start to open up the next 3 tiers, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 of that 1B category. And that includes a whole host of people that are in various critical workforce, whether it's public health or IT or finance or transportation, working congregate settings. What we want to do, and what we've done throughout this pandemic, is to make sure we look at who is most at risk, either by age or some other medical condition, or because of their occupation. And so that's why we've really made sure that the information is there on these additional tiers. We're not there yet. We're still a few weeks away, but what we want to do is to have that information so business leaders can then start to say, hey, how do I make sure that my workforce are protected? How do I make sure that my workforce is able to get vaccinated? And that's what really we want to continue to do. But again, we still have a lot of work to do in the above age 65 and those above age 50 in multi-generational households, 1B1 category.
Great. Thank you for explaining the different tiers. And as I'm sure this is probably your number one question, it's the one we get, is some timing. When can we expect herd immunity, some time when we can start opening our businesses?
Well, so those are two different questions, right? Herd immunity is really this concept that we have enough people who have either been infected or enough people who have been vaccinated that you have some protective sense around the population. That is months and months away. We are really, even in our planning, and remember, we're trying to get 45,000 Washingtonians vaccinated on a daily basis, and we're about a third of that right now. So we really hope our business leaders can help us and work with us. But really, it's at the end of the day, it's going to take 6 months, 7 months to really get there, even at that fast clip of 45,000, while we're still only a third of that right now. So it's going to take time. But at the same time, we are also doing everything we can to make sure we prioritize when we know there's not enough vaccine. Look, Amy, at the end of the day, if we had more vaccine, if vaccine supply was plentiful, we wouldn't even have to prioritize. We'd say, look, everybody, just go get vaccinated. But we want to protect those who are most likely, if they get infected with COVID-19 or because of their occupation, they're more likely to be exposed to COVID-19. We want to make sure they do not have a negative outcome, and that includes death. And so that's why it's so critical that while we recognize we all want to get to herd immunity, we all want to get there, and it's going to take 6 months, it's going to take a long time to get there, we've got to focus on those who are more likely to either get infected or to have a negative outcome, which is what we're working on with now going to this 1B1 category, again, by age, and then certainly going into those critical workforce, those who are most likely to get exposed and potentially get infected.
Well, thank you. We certainly appreciate the thoughtful approach to this. Moving into some other questions we've had from our employers. They want to help with the vaccine effort. So for example, if they have a large warehouse space and have been working with their local health district, police departments on logistics, how would they go about becoming a vaccine distribution site?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We've had some very large, as you know, Washington is fortunate to have some very large companies that are able to provide a lot of space, but it's not just the large companies, there are additional places where space will be possible. I think the best way to do that is to make contact with a partner in that community who has vaccine, right? So right now, the way we had rolled things out, it was very much going through healthcare system and clinics, and also some of our local public health partners or jurisdictions. But as we start to pivot to this coming week, adding these mass throughput sites, mass vaccination sites in 4 parts of the state, in addition to what's happening with our local partners in the Puget Sound area, we recognize that there are partners, whether it's a pharmacy, whether it's a clinic, whether it's a hospital, whether it's a provider, whether it's some other entity that has vaccine. And they may not be able to actually get that vaccine out as quickly as they can. So we'd encourage those business leaders to make contact back with one of those partners. And if you go to our website, in addition to Phase Finder, we actually have a list of where the vaccines have been allocated in the state. So you can actually say, okay, by X county or Y county or Z county, who are the providers that have vaccine? And then the business leaders can make contact with those providers and say, hey, I'm ready to bring my warehouse or my facility. Is it possible for me to utilize that to help support your work? Ultimately, we can't do this alone. Public sector has a lot of work and a lot of responsibilities on its hands right now. What we have to do is just to make sure that we're partnering with our private sector that oftentimes are really good at logistics and IT and process flow, process improvement. So when I come into this secretary role, I'm coming in from this perspective of we have to really be thinking about not just traditional public health, but how do we really work with our private sector so it's traditional and this forward-thinking way of looking at the world upon us. Vaccines is today's issue. It will be the issue for the next 3 to 6 months. But eventually, it shouldn't just stop there. It should be, what are those process flow improvements? What are those partnerships that we develop that will allow us to accelerate the work that's going to help all Washingtonians to have this incredible energy around high technology, what I call high tech, and also high touch, and also making sure that we have that real know-how and harness the power of the private sector as we continue to vaccinate and do other activities related to health in our state.
Well, Dr. Shah, we certainly thank you very much for all the time that you put in your team. We appreciate the partnership with you, and we look forward to that long-term effort to bring Washington State back online. So thank you for your time today. Dave, back to you.
Thank you so much.
Just listening to Dr. Shah, seems like we've been scrambling for quite a while, and now it just feels like we're getting some, I'd call it cautious optimism, right? It looks like we're gathering some momentum in the right direction. Mm-hmm. To get to that 45,000 doses per day, do you have a sense of the timing on that? Will that be weeks, months to get to that level?
Well, I think that will become clear in the next week or so once we have a clear delineation or clear understanding of how many vaccines are actually available, already been manufactured in storage, as well as how many vaccines the manufacturers are planning on producing over the next 6 to 8 months. Once we have that, then I think the fact that we've introduced Microsoft and Starbucks into the equation in Washington State, having some very big businesses who have a good idea of logistics and distribution, and Amazon is in there as well, I think Washington State will be leading the nation in getting vaccines out there.
Yeah, including Costco and Keiser Permanente, 2 others that are also involved.
Absolutely, yes, a good collaboration.
Yeah, well, thank you, Amy. We really appreciate the opportunity to give our viewers some more information on this. I'm sure you'll be back later on with additional good news.
Great, thanks for having me.
Okay. Stay with us for more on Capital Focus. Up next, we sit down with this week's Washington problem solver, Michelle Hege of DH.
Washington has always been known as a state of makers, trailblazers, innovators, entrepreneurs. Now, as we recover from unprecedented challenges brought about by a pandemic, we want to build our economy back better. The AWB Institute looks forward to shaping this renewal with Washington in the making. This effort puts a focus on new innovations and collaborations in infrastructure, workforce, business climate, and other strategies designed to grow prosperity in every corner of our state. It also features economic data both at the state and county level to support local decision-making and measure our collective efforts. Join us as we work to make Washington stronger. Visit WashingtonInTheMaking.org today to learn more. And now, Washington Problem Solvers, presented by McKay Sposito.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Dave Maston. During this pandemic, many heroes have stepped up. Our doctors, nurses, frontline workers going above and beyond, as are many Washington employers. Here to tell us more is AWB President Kris Johnson in this week's Problem Solvers.
Thanks, Dave. Problem Solvers is where we get to talk about people working to bridge the divide and find solutions to our common problems. For Washington employers, there's no party affiliation for helping our state recover from this historic crisis. And no one understands that better than Michelle Hege, the CEO of the advertising and public relations firm DH, headquartered in Spokane, and co-chair of AWB's Rebound and Recovery Task Force and the immediate past chair of Greater Spokane Incorporated. Michelle, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be here.
Hey, Michelle, you were one of the first people to get involved in our Rebound and Recovery Task Force. Can you share with us just a little bit more about that important task force?
Absolutely. I think AWB saw right away that we needed to gather business leaders from different industries and different locations in our state to talk about a response to the pandemic. So last spring, you assembled a great group of folks, and we started talking, what can we do to support our small businesses during this time? And the task force saw two immediate opportunities. One was the creation of a PPE portal where our great Washington manufacturers who pivoted right away to manufacturing masks and shields and a variety of PPE supplies were able to connect with employers who needed those supplies to reopen. And so that portal was created and was envisioned by the task force. The second thing that came up as a need for small business was what we called a toolkit. And it was really designed to help small businesses navigate reopening. So it included a reopening plan template. It included signs they could put up and tailor for their business about safety protocols. There were training resources for employees, even floor stickers. And I'm proud that the task force and AWB were able to stand up the website, reboundandrecovery.org, really within about a month of our first meeting.
Hey, Michelle, no doubt the activity has been critically important for the Rebound and Recovery Task Force, the creation of the PPE portal, and I'm proud to say we've had our 5,000th request through that portal for Made in Washington PPE by Washingtonians. We've had the portal be downloaded, the toolkit for reopening businesses 2,000 plus times. No doubt this has been a great success of the Rebound and Recovery Task Force.
You're absolutely right, Chris. And you know, that site continues to be important today. And one thing I'd like to mention is that Site Crafting from Tacoma, their CEO, Brian Forth, donated the development of that portal to the task force effort. We're so grateful to them for that work. And I'd encourage people to visit it. Let's buy PPE from Washington manufacturers.
Great, couldn't agree more. Hey, tell us a little bit about why did you get involved? You're a busy executive. Why did you choose to get involved in Rebound and Recovery?
Yeah, you know, our small businesses in Washington are the heart of our economy. And as a small business owner, I felt compelled to be a part of the solutions. And I am so proud of our businesses all around the state who, in the midst of a crisis, stepped up and said, what can we do? How can we help? And I feel that our business community has done such an amazing job of being creative, looking for solutions, and frankly, of creating safe environments for employees and for customers. And so I've been really thankful to be able to contribute to the effort.
Here we are 10 months into this pandemic. You know, what are the big challenges facing employers today in the state of Washington?
Well, of course, we have industries that are still closed. So many of our restaurants, our entertainment industry, hospitality, businesses that really are, closing in on a year of having very limited operations, or in some cases, virtually no operations. And that has been a challenge. It continues to be a challenge. And, every day we're losing businesses in our state. And so I think, the number one thing we need to do is get businesses that are still closed relief. And we're hopeful that that's coming from the federal level. But that is really job one. We do not want to lose our fabulous small businesses in our state. They are, those are our employers, right? We need to retain those jobs and help those impacted businesses make it through.
We know it's important to get to a better tomorrow. How do we do that?
Yeah, well, the arrival of the vaccine has been, no pun intended, a huge shot in the arm. We need to do everything we can to expedite getting that out into our communities. And I think the private sector can play a really great role in that. I know we've got employers who are ready and willing to be a part of helping to expedite getting that out into our communities. It'll be a key part of accelerating the opening of our schools and the reopening of many of our businesses.
We're talking about rebound and recovery. We've got an agenda coming out of that task force. Can you just share a few things with our guests today about that important rebound and recovery agenda?
The task force has done a great job in putting together some ideas to communicate to legislators about how we can accelerate our economic recovery. And I know legislators want to hear from our small businesses, right? That they care, that they really want to help our businesses weather this storm, and that they really want to ensure that we retain jobs. And so some of the ideas that are included in this agenda, one is do no harm, right? This is not a time to burden businesses or really look at new taxes. This is a time to support businesses and ensure they have the relief and, frankly, the pathway to get open and to survive. We know that we need to solve our unemployment insurance tax issue. There's a risk that businesses are going to see huge increases in that, and we know that legislators are focused on solving that, but that's really critical. We also need to look at childcare. We need to look at strategies for ensuring our childcare sector can be open. We need to look at accelerating the opening of schools and how to support that from the state. We need to look at transportation and other strategies in healthcare. So the agenda is full of ideas that came from the business community.
Well, Michelle, we're out of time. Let me thank you for all your leadership. This has been a really important task force for AWB and one of great pride. It's really been great to see the whole economic sectors of our state come together to work on rebound and recovery and to lead us through this important time. And we're glad that you're playing that important role of leadership. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Dave, back to you.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks to Michelle. What a great leader and a great example for all of us and all the work that she's doing.
Absolutely.
And now we close with this. State Fair Park in Yakima has recently earned top honors from the International Association of Fairs and Expositions. The Central Washington State Fair was canceled last year, but organizers held a Fair Food Fest instead. This drive-through event gave food vendors a chance to sell great barbecue, Hawaiian teriyaki, and more. This special event also collected more than 4,000 pounds of canned goods to donate to local food banks. This is AWB's Capital Focus. I'm Dave Maston. Be safe, be smart. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching. AWB TV.